chair.
Tell me when you're ready. Are we good? Okay. Call the meeting of the Admin and Finance Standing Committee, Tuesday, July 8th, 2025 to order. Approve the 2024 meeting minutes.
I had, some suggestions, or assuming that people that read these if they understand, like under resort tax, it says we must have 5% for taxes. Can we change that to property tax relief?
Sure.
Because that's what it's not for taxes, it's for property tax relief
Okay.
You're talking in the budget line? Oh, in the minutes.
in the minutes.
Where was
Give me a
was
second.
that?
On page 2,
For property tax.
5A.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, thank you.
And under Red Lodge Rural Fire Contract Proposal, the mayor feels we should pay as much as anyone else. I think we should pay the same
Yeah, I think that's,
as anyone else. And the fire department say the city does require to bear a cost. So, and they say that we should have an additional cost.
mhm.
Mm-mm.
And
Sorry, last week was a really hard one to keep up with. You guys
I
were
know.
fast.
I'm shocked that you got this good. So those were the two, edits that I would propose.
I'm also gonna make an edit to my,
They said the city, even though I wasn't here, I watched you on the internet. They stated the city had a need for specialized equipment which required additional fees.
That was it. It was
Yeah.
additional.
Additional capital.
yep, I put that in.
Okay.
Yes, so I would move to approve with those changes as amended.
Okay, I'll second.
All right, hold on. Let me make these edits, get that part, and then
Okay, no problem.
give me a sec.
We'll slow it down a little bit today. Try to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I
30-second pauses after every sentence, though.
know.
Okay. And get that sent here, saved, I'll get that sent to you guys. Is that here? Okay. All right.
All right, are we good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, resolution 3708, set pool fees for the 2025 season. This is up for an action tonight, even though we have not reviewed it prior to this, mainly because they're already charging these fees. And they didn't realize they needed to go to council to change the fees. Dave, do you want to kind of give us a rundown of these, why the lessons are going up and stuff like that?
My understanding is they've increased the lesson length for the private lessons, and they changed the prices accordingly, and as was mentioned, without recognizing that, without, realizing that needed to go through council to do it. So I think the only thing that is a difference is the lessons. Was it?
There was only one, and
Was it I was thinking it's
The individual
the 6-lesson package is what changed.
yeah, so
The
it went
six
from
lessons?
so it went from 90 to 100. They just increased it by $10.
Okay,
No, group swimming lessons.
Is it the group swimming lessons that changed?
yes.
Well, that's the only one that's $100 per person.
Yeah, it's the group swimming lessons. So those are the ones, like when you have all the kids together in one lesson, that's the one that.
Is that the only change?
Mhm.
And you said the time increased, and that's why the price increased.
Yes, because I think they extended the.
So it was 90,
One.
I just want to be able to explain this tonight, it was 90, increased to 100. And how many more minutes are the lessons?
I think a half an hour.
Yeah, I think, and again, that was I was like, oh, you have to have a resolution for that, so that was.
They weren't a half an hour to start with?
No, they were
I think it went from 60 to 90.
yeah, I think it went from an hour to an hour and a half.
That's a really good deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I will verify that.
will you do that before tonight, so
Yeah.
we're not on record saying something that's not true?
So, oh, no.
I know,
Yeah, I'm
thank
good
you.
with that.
All right, okay, I will, I can introduce this tonight. Alright. Approve mayor to sign airport grant, action, and we haven't talked about this, have we talked about this before?
No, we
not.
were gonna talk about it the last one, we forgot those actually, so what happens, this is the, how come my order is, oh, so this is a grant that we got from the state, so you may recall that the airport board went for FEMA funding, or to try to become an AIP airport. They were
Right.
told no, but part of the reasoning for that is when they went to the state to ask for money previously, they said, go ask FEMA, or go ask the AIP first, and then come back to us after they said no. So they went and they asked, they said no, and they came back, and this is basically, $318,000. Is that the total, is 318?
Yeah,
That we are getting, and because we are a sponsor of the airport, since it's our land, they want us to sign it. But because, so it's not our money,
Right.
it's basically just to accept a grant.
okay, and the grant will be used for
It's
resurfacing?
doing the blacktop of everything other than the runway, because the runway was done using private funds.
Okay,
So it's basically what's called the ramp, and the tie downs. It's what everybody else in the United States would call the tarmac, which is not correct, because tarmac is actually the English version of asphalt. So next time you hear somebody say they're out on the tarmac, you say, well, actually.
I'm not gonna do that.
Thank
I am not, but, no, so
You
yep,
say-
you,
Yeah, so it's basically,
Okay.
it's for paving pretty much everything except the runway.
and there's no cost to the city,
There is no cost to the city.
okay.
And does this, and the, study that was done up at the airport, that's already been paid? That was paid by?
It has been closed out, and so I autographed those documents because it was deemed that that was already discussed, I was authorized to execute
That.
and close that out. So that is done, and we don't owe money back on that. I also signed the one for last year, we got $3,000 or $5,000 for weather vane, that was actually the year before, that was the equivalent of this, that I anticipate probably came to the city, but I can't verify it, but we're just doing this one right to make sure.
And so this will,
It's
it
basically,
was 318,500.
Yep.
And it's it's from the state.
and I guess to go back to Jody's question, to be fair, actually, I don't think there's not a match per se, but the airport board is spending some money, so they have our 1% taxes that they get.
But we don't have to pay anything additional,
No,
I guess is what I'm asking.
we are not
Okay.
spending any additional money.
Okay,
And then a year from now, when it's all said and done, I will basically sign and say, yep, it's done, but it's considered that once we approve this, then I'm authorized to sign that as well.
okay.
Jody, are you gonna do that also?
Yeah, I'm just making some notes here, so I know what I'm talking about tonight. Sorry, I'm just talking one way. Resurface, blacktop except runway. Okay,
Don't say tarmac.
I won't say tarmac. No cost, no additional cost to city.
Correct.
And then I'll probably have you explain it further if anybody has any questions, so,
And it's just because we are the landowner,
yes.
and I would actually call
You're
that
the
out. So
sponsor
that
of the
people who
airport.
say, we're giving up control, or, no, we're not.
As
We still
the
own it.
landowner,
It's an improvement to our asset.
right. I can read this tonight, okay. Okay, I will introduce that. And next we have, gosh, we're back to the budget. Finished resort, we were up to resort tax, and Lonnie just gave us an updated,
Yeah, from the last time, I did forget, Mike reminded me, on the resort tax, adding that 100,000 in there for the sidewalks within the EDA grant project. I forgot to add that one in there, so,
What
but,
page did you get on?
just on page 1 of resort tax.
For EDA-related sidewalks.
Yeah, so that would go under road and street, probably under like 931,
oh, so we're gonna add another 100,000 in there?
yes.
Instead of just 80,000? Is it gonna be, oh, no, last year was 80, we were at 50,000, so it's gonna be 150 now?
Yes.
Lonnie, I have a question related to this. So signs related to the trash can bear stuff that we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
can we use resort tax dollars for that, or because it's under 5,000, we cannot?
Well, it wouldn't really fall under streets or parks or pools, so it has to probably go under the solid waste fund.
We could add a line to, that's what I'm asking, could we add a line for it, or do we just want to pull it out of solid waste?
Well, it doesn't pertain to any of those,
Yeah.
departments, is what I was getting at.
Unless it,
Well, I'm just, but we could
Park
add,
trash can.
but it's probably not worth it, just do it in solid waste.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it matters if it's 5,000 or not, I think it just matters if it fits in the criteria of what of the ordinance, what the ordinance says.
Which I don't know if solid, I don't think solid waste is. included
No,
in
because
there.
they have, it isn't, unless it's
It's
for
not
a park,
emergency
unless
clause.
it's for a park, then you
Gotcha.
can put it in there,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Because you guys went through with Mike on all of his
Yep.
budget, so.
We
this-
did, so we're through the,
Resort tax, I think, was the only thing left you guys needed maybe to discuss was law enforcement,
correct.
so.
And to find out where we're at on the Red Lodge Rural Fire contract, if we're actually going to be pulling stuff out of resort tax for that this year, if we're just doing the 28 mils.
I think the general consensus is we're doing the 28 mils.
Okay.
If that, we're just gonna figure out how to make that work. And so I have just kind of a general high-level budget update. The budget that's been floating in my head for a year, over the weekend and actually into yesterday and last night, I can now make it appear on spreadsheet, so it's shareable with everybody. And within that, it tells the story. One of the things that it gives you is the story of the fire that's a problem, and just to share it. I know, Lonnie just sent the latest version to me. Do you remember what the code is, Lonnie? 20, actually, if I can go in and search for fire.
Yeah.
So, one of the problems is if we go to fire protection and control, which is a contract payment. So we went from 216,000 in 21, the
Yeah.
years as I go this up. So to show you as our dollar amount, we went from 216,800 one year to 225,000 the next year
Yep,
to 307,000 the next year.
I know,
So
that's
that's-
when we started having a
That,
fit about it.
that's when it bit us, is we went from 225 to 307 to 318, and so 318, 330. So we're not anticipating a big jump. The big jump that hit us was 3 years ago.
Right, and I still, I mean, I understand, just doing the 28 mils and then working on something else later, but we really need to actually work on something else.
Yeah, and I think.
Because it's
my-
not sustainable to keep it in there that way, but,
Yeah,
I'm
and there's a discussion and I would even say a disagreement or an argument, not in the negative sense, but just disagreeing viewpoints of, whether that amount is appropriate or not. And just, hey, you're
Right.
getting a really good deal doesn't end it for me. It's what are we paying compared to everybody else, and
Well, and I do, I think it's a budgeting issue, because when you dedicate, and I've said this, I'm a stuck record, I know, you dedicate mills, you're limiting the rest of, the property taxes are basically eventually all going to go to,
There is a second spreadsheet that I have that basically shows us that since they changed the budgeting in 2001, to where we get 1/2 the average rate of inflation over 3 years,
right,
we've lost 22% of our purchasing power. So
correct,
that's happened over the same time frame as well.
exactly.
So the reality is, how do you address that? And the way you do that is you address and you charge more taxes. My thinking is if we can annex into the fire department, that will address the other part, so we don't need to go raise taxes. And
Right.
the reason I say that in air quotes is because we need to be genuine and authentic when we talk about annexing into the fire district, that taxes are in fact going up, meaning that individual taxpayers can be paying more taxes. But I think that addresses the lost purchasing power over the years too, so we don't have to do additional actions at this point and for a while to come yet.
But the only way to do that is to actually go out and get signatures.
Mhm.
I'm not completely certain of that. That's one of the ways, and if that's what we need to do, we need to figure out what's the appropriate role for the
I
city
think
to
you're
play
going
in
to
that.
have an easier time getting it to pass if we do the petition. I think you've got a tough sell if you put it to the voters, because they're like, why would I do that? So, where you can have those individual conversations with people.
And I need to get some guidance that we're comfortable with on our work, because when we started this conversation 2 or 3 times before, we've been shut down, we've been told we shouldn't be involved. I'm aware that other municipalities have done it. So
Yeah.
we need to get some more,
See, and we were told before you became mayor that we could do it, so, by Tom, because he actually, they did it over
Yeah.
in Bear Creek. Yeah, so,
well, he wrote he was very heavy in authoring the state law that drove it. So-
right, I'm sorry, Rob,
So
go
I
ahead.
guess the question as a taxpayer, been thinking about this. The 28 mills that is that in addition to?
No, it's a portion of what the city gets. So the problem is, we used to get 100 mills, now we get 80, now we get 70.
Okay, so when you shift the burden of the fire to the fire district,
Mhm.
the city's still going to continue to collect
Yes,
those dollars.
and the justification for that is, that's okay, we've lost 23% of our purchasing power.
And I understand, you guys are concentrating on your checkbook, but I want to concentrate on my checkbook.
I agree 100%.
Right,
So, from a taxpayer standpoint, how much in taxes, you know, every year, those property taxes go up just a little bit more.
Or a lot more.
Well, they say it's just a little bit more, but as you add each year together, all of a sudden you have an additional house payment every month just to do your property taxes.
Okay.
And so, it's city, I own lots of property in the city as well as being outside of the city.
right.
So what kind of a burden are you shifting to me? Because I've had companies say, you know, we're not gonna provide this for you anymore, you can do it at store level because it'll save us money. But at the same time, the message to me at store level is, my cost just went up.
And
So what are
we're
you doing
shifting
with
about
the tax?
21 mills is what it
Okay,
what
so-
it boils down to.
So what does that cost each property owner within the city? That's some information.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So it
No.
would be whatever the fire assessment is, because
Right.
the city's taxes aren't going to, because that 28 mills we get, so say we get 60. 28 of those 60, right off the top, goes to the fire department.
Right.
So if we go into that district, those 28 mills then goes back into the general fund to where it will fund whatever needs to be in there, but in turn, to keep the services that we currently have. If this doesn't happen, it's gonna get to a point where you're gonna have to have a streetlight district, you're gonna have to have a police something's
Right.
gonna have to
Or
be-
alternatively, you
And I
stop providing
understand.
less of those services.
But it's, the unintended consequence is
Correct.
less people can afford to live here because the cost, monthly cost, if you break that yearly bill into a monthly figure,
Right.
that monthly cost added to your rent or your house payment or whatever starts to make it more prohibitive
I
for
agree
your
100%.
average person that's living in the city,
So,
which means we have to leave to let the people who have a bigger income move in.
So,
I agree 100%. That's why I said we have to be authentic and genuine
Yeah.
and
Dick,
call that what it is.
I do just want to say that if you live outside of the city limits, you are being charged 21 mills by the fire department. So what would happen is, you know, in addition to all the other county taxes. So
Right.
if you're in the city limits, it's going to be the same. The fire department will have a line item on there,
Right, but
you know?
But they
And
would still be paying.
still an
They,
increase.
they will, yes, it will be like 21
And
mills,
wa-
because the
the
fire
water-
department will be
Water
going
bills
to
and
you.
everything go up every year.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
And
sometimes that's lost, that
no, we,
the services we need versus the bill we get, and all those things, it's like the taxpayers just expected to bear the burden of
Well,
whatever.
and
it
there's,
decides
Right.
to be.
there's two benefits to me of going to the annexation that have nothing to do with the city standpoint. I'm not disallowing the benefit that it gets to the city, because it solves a problem that we've been fighting in the city for many years.
Mhm.
Because part of it is, well, do we discount it by it? And it's like, well, no, because we've already lost over the years. But one, it gets the people in the city paying same cost as everybody else in the district,
which is lower than,
which is lower than what we're paying right now. But the second thing, which to me is just as important, is now when the fire department wants more money, they go directly to the voters. We're no longer the middleman in that conversation. So right now, the problem is the fire comes back and says, hey, we need it, or it went from 225 to 330, and we're just kind of stuck with it. And so I said, to me, I want I want them to go to the voters and say,
And I,
here's the money that we need for this service, either you say yes, or we don't provide that level of service.
you know, I understand the argument from the city side,
mhm.
but I still have to argue for the taxpayer that's getting hit every year with higher taxes.
I don't
Oh, I
disagree,
agree,
and that was
no.
my concern when they were trying to
Even though
shuffle
we'll
it
be
through.
paying
is that-
less for fire if we go to the fire district.
We're still gonna be
is what you're
paying
saying.
more across the
We're still
board.
gonna be paying more because it's in
Absolutely.
addition to
Yeah.
what we're already paying.
100%
So you're not saving the
Okay.
taxpayer a dime.
Correct.
Right,
You're actually
correct. It
costing
will,
them.
it will go up, correct.
Yeah.
So,
All
let's
right,
wrap
So
this
you
up.
just need to keep that in mind,
Oh,
because,
we are.
and I understand when you're doing your budgets and you're looking at the services that the city needs to provide, what are essential services and what are nice-to-have services?
Right.
Okay, because sometimes that gets lost in, you know, I've heard so many times, even from the general public, people come in, they're maybe at a higher level of income than the majority of the community. And it's just, well, if we care about, we would do it, you know, and then the city falls into that, well, we care about our city, so we need
Well,
to do this, but
we
do we need to? So just keep those in mind. when
we
you're
are
spending my money.
required to provide fire protection.
Right.
Right, but what he's
So-
saying is instead
No,
of-
and
But there's a lot
but
of
I'm
things
just
you're not
saying,
required.
exactly, I'm just saying fire protection is like
Yeah.
one of the
And I'm
requirements
not
that
arguing
we are,
against fire
yeah.
protection, it's very important.
No, I understand exactly
I'm
what
just
you're saying,
saying-
Rod, I do. I get it. Like, do we need a
Yeah.
new park versus fire protection? Do we need, you know,
Right.
it comes down to choices. It really
Yeah.
does.
You know, and the
Okay.
essential things are important, and the
Yeah.
nice-to-haves need to really be looked at, and what their impact is to the taxpayer, and whether it's, you know, we look at it as
The
property
feel-good
owners
things.
versus
So,
renters, but I can tell you there's no such thing as
right.
giving something to the property owner, charging the property owner something, and they don't pass it on.
Right.
in the
And
I don't disagree with
We'll,
anything you're saying.
we'll just try to wrap this up here real quick.
Okay.
I do want to say, the other choice that we would have would be to put the resort tax back to the voters and have them vote on having public safety be an allowed expense out of resort tax instead of just capital. Those are really, in my mind,
Is how much more do you dilute the resort tax to the point that it
well,
really isn't.
then it comes to choices. Do we need a hockey rink? do we need versus, you know, I mean, do we need those big projects every year, those feel-good projects
and that's
versus fire
because
protection?
there is, and there are people who will argue, and again, it comes back to tax dollars. I call it the cake versus frosting discussion. There are people who think that the resort tax should be nothing but frosting. You have to provide all those services, even if we didn't have resort tax. So don't use my resort tax for that, raise taxes to do it. And people on that committee will say, you need to have a public safety mill. Well, that raises dollars too. So all of those have the same impact.
And the original discussion on resort tax in all of the communities was to provide money for streets, sidewalks, curb and gutter. That's how it was sold
And
many
that's
years
what
ago.
West Yellowstone, they were dirt
Yeah.
roads when this passed.
And we still don't have nice streets,
The year is
curbs,
young.
gutters.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
maybe someday, but we're still relying on grant money for all of that. And I know there's a lot of stuff that's underground that it's paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the visible stuff,
Okay, here's my question.
keep all that in mind.
Let me see if I understand it. The city gets 60 mills, is that correct?
That is not correct.
So it's not.
The city gets 1/2 of 1% of the average rate of inflation more than we did last year. So what happens is, they figure that out as a mathematical number. Then they say, based on that mathematical number, here's how many mills you get to get that. So the number of mills, because I always thought
The value of a mill
a
goes
mill
that
was
way.
a mill was a mill.
No, I know.
And it had inflation that built into it. 2001, when they changed it, so we went from 100 mills to 90 mills to 80 mills. So if you have any contracts that are set up as a mill,
Mill.
then what happens is every time they raise the value of our mills and give us less mills, then that fire contract just went up as a percentage of our general fund.
Exactly. And could we possibly sell this, joining the district, by saying that we will take 10 mills out of our budget instead of the 28 that we've been doing, and give that back to the taxpayer as tax relief?
No,
We've considered that, but that doesn't acknowledge the fact that everything else has been going up. So where the other cities have been, what I would propose is, because I had that discussion, do we need to do it as
Kind of help,
as a tit for tat? But then what that means is the amount of taxes we're collecting is less than what it is. At the same time, all the other expenses are going up. And Lonnie, go ahead.
so right away on your mill, so I get a formula. Whatever that transfer is, that 5% transfer that we do into the general fund the previous year. So say, I haven't done the calculation yet for our last fiscal year that we have to transfer from resort tax, that 5% of whatever is collected. So then, once I figure that out and we get how many mills we can actually levy, we have to decrease it by the amount that we transferred. So the taxpayers are already getting a decrease in their taxes because of that transfer. Because we're allowed 100 mills. The transfer is worth, so a mill would be worth, I'm just doing this easy math. So we get 100 mills. A mill is worth $1,000. With the transfer of like 60,000, we have to decrease the amount of mills we can levy by that transfer. So
That's our property tax relief from
that is
resort tax.
separate, but if we wanted to change that, that has to go back to the voters as a property tax relief part of the resort tax.
And what she's saying is we just decrease the number of,
We're already
the
doing
tax.
that, though.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there a way that you could provide us that formula? Just 'cause like, I work better if I can see things on paper.
Yeah, I
We
can.
could show you last year.
It would be nice to see like the breakdown of how
But
the
the
money
only
came
problem
in,
is,
how it had to go back out, what ended up.
real
the
basic.
only
Yeah.
problem with that formula is, it's from the state. The state does not have the resort tax calculated in there. That's a manual calculation.
Right, that's what I'm asking for.
Well, and that's fine, but I'm just saying that the formula from the state does not include it in there.
Right,
I have to manually decrease
Yeah.
those mills.
yeah, no, and that's what I'm asking for that part, is like just that process.
Where it
Like,
starts.
Yeah, like,
Okay.
this is our chunk of money, this is what you have to do, this is what ends up getting milled out, this is what we end up with. like that.
Would it be possible to
Workflow.
bring just that one sheet for last year? Just so that, because it's
Yeah.
not, we don't know the numbers yet for this year.
No, and I can send it to you guys.
So
Yeah.
the value of a mill changes every year.
Right, last
Yeah,
year it
so-
was
so what
what,
happens is-
8,000?
It's not that we get 100 mills and as the mill goes up, we get more.
Mhm.
Now keep in mind, that changes this year as December 31st. So now they're gonna go actual up to 4% is what we get. But a mill, now voted mills are different. So if you vote like a mill for this, then it's a mill is a mill is a mill. But what we have is just general property tax relief. And what they say is you get $1 million. Given that this was here, that equals 68 mills this year versus it was 76 mills last year. And so what happens is the amount of money we have goes up, 1/2 the rate of inflation over the last 3 years. But the number of mills we get may go up or down depending on what that,
So you're
what that
getting,
number actually is.
you're
We get
getting
fewer and fewer,
1.5% increase each year
Right,
in dollars,
in dollars.
which translates to less mills, which means anything
Right.
that you set up as paid for with mills is a bigger percentage of your budget.
okay, let's, I think we've killed this thing
Yeah.
for right now. But let's get, now that we've decided that the fire will most likely be paid out of not resort tax, then let's talk about law enforcement. Let's get through that before, I mean, we only got like 15 minutes left. So, let's go through their budget. Have you really changed anything since the last time? Okay,
No, I included, because when you guys talked about the general fund, their budget, the shop heaters,
yeah,
I did move that into
okay,
resort tax. So those are, I
okay.
think those were updated last time too, so nothing
Five.
has.
And did we,
I
and you
have a-
did include the 50,000 as a future reserve?
Correct.
Okay,
Good.
and,
How many years will we have to do that?
A lot.
It depends on the conversation. So another conversation that we have had with the fire department, although it didn't get real far, because what they wanted is, as they're talking about expanding. So when I was on my trip down in Utah, I went and visited a couple of different districts. At Seneca, which is a little town down there, they have a fire district like we do. And they have, meaning it's a district, and then they have, a police department that's the city, but they're in the same building. So, for instance, one of the things that would happen, let's say they wanted to build a new fire department, they wanted to build it across the street where AY is. You guys buy the building, we'll pay the land, now we could accomplish it that way. But what they're looking for, the land that we actually have is just in the parking lot,
Yeah.
so it's not really, it's,
Yeah.
while that was something we pursued, I don't think it's gonna have any traction.
okay. So, anyway, so do we need to discuss the law enforcement budget? Does anybody have any questions on this? I know that Resort Tax Committee did not like this budget, but
Because,
they didn't agree with the $50,000 reserve for the capital outlay. They didn't, they wanted, I don't even have it with me anymore, but if we're not, they were also making room for the fire department
It was,
in there.
part of it was the cake versus frosting. If you need more money, just pass a public safety mill and
Right.
charge more taxes.
But they also had the fire department in there at a certain amount too. So
Yeah.
in order to make a balance, they were basically taking it from the police.
The two things that I
so
would
the fire
like,
department's taking it from law enforcement?
Well, not necessarily, and just to make it balanced, the majority of the committee members do not feel that the resort tax should be used on public safety. So,
Even though
I totally,
population-
I totally agree.
I would say the
10,000
majority of,
people.
I would say there's a vocal part of that committee.
Yeah,
That's all frosting, no cake.
yes.
Lonnie, when we do our budget and we build a big extra $400,000 in to pay off the pool or any sort of a thing, is that reflected in here at all?
No.
Because the other question that I have that we haven't put in here that I would like to include, and if we word it correctly, it could be that money, but we need to start setting some money aside for the potential of, if Brewery Hill gets approved, we're gonna have a
A match.
a match that we need to cover, and to me, that's gonna come out, that's gonna be like the back truck that we spent $500,000 or $600,000 on last year. This is part of why we're paying cash, so that it's done and we can make decisions. But.
What will that Brewery Hill match be?
I wanna say a couple $100,000.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, it was 125, but that's also.
It was 12.5%, which I think was like 200 and, yeah.
It also went up a bit, so, yeah.
Yeah, they, and there was a maximum of, and then what I need to do is find the status, but that was, and that's next year's thing, but it just, to me, it wouldn't hurt to set
$50,000 aside?
some of that aside to start being ready for that.
Okay,
How many members on the resort tax committee?
Probably 7.
no. Six.
Is it, I was gonna say 6 is my first, but I think
And
it's
then
an
me.
odd number, so.
I'm a non-voting, I'm
You're
just
a
the rep,
non-voting member.
I'm just the rep. Cause
I
there's
was just curious,
Brent,
and
Joy,
are they
Jeremy.
appointed by the
Yeah.
planning?
Brent,
No,
No.
appointed by the mayor with consent of council.
Right.
so there's Jeremy, Tom, Brent, Joy, and, oh yeah, Chris,
Chris Keys.
and then,
So 5 plus you.
5 plus
So that's,
me.
so it is 6, and it's 5 voting, which is
5
why it's an odd number.
yep,
So how much do we want to budget for Brewery Hill match? 50,000?
Let's add 50. This is as a,
okay,
I hate to say placeholder when it's that big of a number, but it's a relatively small number too.
okay.
Is there match money needing to come up if Eagles Nest is approved?
No, there will not be, because basically it's the same conversation that we had with the Bastions, which is, if we can get 75%, you need to take 75%. We'll try to get you more, but if we're unable to do so, then we're unable to do so.
Okay,
Can you sell the rocks that are there?
okay,
Pardon?
Can you sell the rocks that
okay, so let's,
Eagles Nest?
let's keep going, guys. So are we good with law enforcement services? Anybody have any more questions on that? Okay, then, and then, I think we went already through road and streets, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
guys went through those with the money last
Yeah,
time.
okay, yep, and then, parks, so,
And I would say that Brewery Hill could probably be a line underneath parks.
yeah. Or would it be
Or
streets and roads?
It
Because,
could, it could go either.
I think
or.
technically it's a trail system,
Yeah.
so versus it's not a sidewalk, so.
No, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Yep.
I think it's trail,
Okay.
and so, and by the way, as we've had this conversation,
okay,
that's one of the thoughts is, it would come out of that parks, that it's very possible that some of that parks money goes down.
Yep.
The year that we're doing that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that, and they are aware of that Parks Board is, so,
okay,
and they were good with
It
it.
looks like on the Parks Board that there's quite a few, over expenditures for last year. I mean, gas, oil, diesel, fuel.
Yeah, because we have Willie and he's been doing a lot more than previous years, so we just need to increase some of that stuff, which is just fuel
yeah,
and.
there was so much deferred maintenance on those parks.
Yeah,
It was-
he's been
Yeah,
cranking.
Is
so,
that the same with machinery and equipment
Yep.
yeah,
and purchase services? No, tools. So those all three are because of Willie's increased workload?
Yeah, increased productivity, we'll put it that way.
Just through-
Does that
Okay.
include him, we're gonna go back on this, does that include him clearing the snow on sidewalks
No,
north
that comes out of
south
street,
of town? Pardon?
that comes out of south of town.
Yeah,
When they do the plowing, that plowing comes out of.
no, he's
No,
been doing
clearing
the
the
sidewalk clearing on, like, basically from,
But
On the
sidewalk
west
is
side.
part of streets, so it
He gets
it
paid
comes
out
out
of
of,
both.
yeah.
So if he's
Oh, he gets
doing,
paid
He's
out of both.
50/50 out of, yep.
yeah.
yeah, so if he's doing stuff in streets, then
Okay.
that is allocated.
it doesn't come out of parks, it comes out of the street budget, which is.
And other professional services?
I can't remember what that one was for. I know Mike and I went over that one.
Yeah, it's basically if we outsource everything, what we brought.
Well, I don't
We said
recall
again
for
for-
that one. I
Or
think
we-
it was a one-time thing, why that one increased, but I can't remember what it was for.
Wow, our parks garbage cans, what we've had to budget for those has really gone up, hasn't it? Over the years.
I think Mike is,
Well, it's just the last couple of years, because it used to be way more, I guess.
yeah.
47,000 back in 21-22. But did we get rid of some garbage cans
I
in
think
some
they-
places?
Many years ago we
They
did.
eliminated the ones in Rotary because those were getting, people were just
And-
leaving the crap outside instead,
Yeah,
and then the bears.
and lions, yeah, it
Yeah.
was easier.
So
If
they
you have a
did
garbage can
eliminate.
and it gets full, people stack around it, actually cleaned it to get rid of the garbage can. That was back when I was on council.
So, yeah, they got rid of those ones.
Well, I mean, I've been to Rotary Park, and when you sit there and have a picnic and there's no garbage can, that's kind of like,
Yeah, but it was to the point where the bears were trashing the park.
You haul it out with.
So they have a,
Yeah.
you pack it in, you pack it
Pack it.
out.
Oh, no, they just put it in the trash can that we manage over there. I watch them every day, and they don't splash it, and then I get to go clean up the trash. It happens every year.
I think maybe we should put a sign up.
I think there is that says pack it in, you pack it out.
I didn't
There
see
is a
one.
sign, but,
Yeah.
it seems to me that it's not, to have a park and then not have a trash can makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
And
that, I feel the same way.
understand that it was
I'm like-
abused, and I understand that people were throwing mattresses in there and things like that, but I think that we need to have a trash can in a park where there are barbecues and they're having
Picnic tables.
picnics.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, 100%. I just,
That's a Mike thing, that's
Yeah.
not, that's not me.
And I said,
There was a reason why they took them out,
yeah.
right,
And,
but
and it immediately solved
the bear issue.
the
Yeah, no.
problems with, because if you put 10 cans in, you'll get 15 cans worth of trash. You can't put it in
well,
there.
that to me
and
says
keep
there's a
dumping.
need for it then.
What if
I
instead of
No, because
having,
what people are dropping off is not,
what if
people
instead of
using the park.
having a dumpster
it's the
there?
motorhomes that come by and empty it.
What if not having a dumpster there, but individual trash
They
cans?
used to be individual.
That's what they were.
They never had a dumpster there.
We had a dumpster there
Okay,
because
one at
Rotary
a
did a
time, guys.
wrap on it.
Let's, Chelsea, she's trying to talk here.
I honestly agree with not having the trash cans because I have actually seen a very noticeable difference in terms of bear activity over there.
Okay.
And again, that used to be a house that we would have to hit about twice a week because of bear activity, the place that we do manage there, and we have not had to do it once this year,
Okay.
which is really good.
But
And then
there's
on
things
top
like
of it,
that.
again, it will get abused, and I'm kind of the ilk of if you're gonna abuse it, you don't get it.
Well, what about if you put in one of them like they have on the Forest Service in those campgrounds?
Have we noticed littering?
No.
And this is not unique to Red Lodge. This is.
No, I know.
This
I'm
is a nationwide, here's how you approach these problems.
No, I
And
get that,
and I
it's
was,
just,
just for the record, I was in your shoes with your opinion.
yeah,
When I was on council, I came in and said, yeah, show me, because I'm not buying this.
yeah.
And then they did it, and it was like flipping a switch.
We find trash in the barbecues.
But
That's
you
where
find
they
less
find it.
trash in
So
the
that's-
barbecues than you found next to the trash cans and around the trash cans and throughout the park. It is actually a
But having it
decreased
in the
number.
barbecue is still a bear attractant.
Okay, I'm.
Okay.
So let's get
So,
rid of the
let's-
garbage.
Okay, let's go, move on,
We
because
have
that
no
doesn't really have
answer.
anything to do with our budget, so,
Thank you,
and
Sure.
I've got to go, so Patty can get back, so, as far, let's just hit this Parks Fund really quickly, did you take the 400,000 out for the,
The fire?
no, not the fire, for the, big project that they wanted to
So
have
that's
in
not-
there?
That's not put into this one, it's
Okay.
in the reserve,
Okay,
in that one spreadsheet
See,
that we.
okay,
that-
okay.
That's where,
because I know Resort Tax, when they did theirs, they had like 400,000
yeah.
for the big project, which was probably going to be redoing the, hockey rink,
That was
and the match for the grant and all of that stuff, so,
So
okay,
that's the what if,
okay,
if it's
Perfect.
available, if we collect that much.
okay, perfect. So, any other questions on the parks budget?
I do have a question on the Pride's Park budget, that additional 82,000 that's being put in for that. I feel like I've only heard whisperings of it, I've never actually seen a presentation for it or have an understanding of what they're doing. Like, I understand that there's a need for it to a degree, but at the same time, like, I feel like that's a very big chunk to be thrown in there. And
There is in the claims, there is a claim in there for the company that did the design of Pride Park and stuff, so,
right, I'm just wondering, like,
and maybe
so
they're gonna-
before that design got approved, Like, I feel like,
Mhm.
shouldn't we have approved a budget for it?
Well, and
That's
I
in the
think
Parks Board
city,
budget.
I think
Oh.
city
Okay, so
council,
that came out of their 85,000 that I see directly underneath that?
Yeah,
But then
that-
why is that still 85,000?
Because this is the current year, this is
Okay.
the new year, that's coming out of last year's, 85,000 for
That
the Parks
85
Board
is out of
project.
last year.
So the.
Okay.
but we have a
the-
preliminary
the money
budget of
for the
hundred and
planning is not coming
sixty-seven.
up in two line items.
Because the
Okay,
price-
But to your
but-
point, there's a valid question, because, and this is actually where the next meeting is, there's a whole bunch of projects that we all sat down and said, this is where we're gonna spend $82,000 on this.
But just let me bring it back to what I wanna, yes, but also, more so, we have this project, and I am perfectly content with park boards. Like, again, I'm a firm believer that the people in charge of their budget should be able to spend it as they see fit, and that they're gonna be the best people to make the decisions for that. That being said, they're doubling it when I feel like that fund should be coming out of their initial parks projects budget.
In other words, parks should still be 85, not suddenly up. If you look, we went from 119 to 201.
You're hundred and sixty-seven
Oh, I'm.
Yeah,
I'm-
167 is 196%
versus
increase.
85.
So that's where I have more of an
Thousand.
issue, is the fact that I'm happy to have these projects go on, but it's on them to budget how they wanna have those. They can't just keep
Well, and
adding
I
to it.
just, and there again, it kind of goes, I agree with Dave though, too, with your next meeting, is like, if you're redesigning a park,
Mhm.
you know,
I'm not in that.
how does that, who authorizes that?
And again, I think that's usually, and I'm firm with saying that Parks Board, working alongside with Mike Maples, they can make those kinds of decisions, but they have to stay within the budget that's provided.
They have a budget and that's it.
And that's
And-
what they're requesting in this one.
Yeah, but they're asking for
Doubling it.
literally 5 years ago.
140%.
They're
of the
asking
last year's budget.
$100,000 more.
Like I said, but they're asking. You
Yeah.
guys don't have to approve it, they're asking for it though, that's in this initial, this isn't approved, nothing.
Right.
You
I
guys,
mean-
that's why you guys are discussing
Okay.
it now.
I just see that, you know, the project was 85,000, and then
So,
the other project, I mean,
So the
both-
Parks project
Oh, that's
is,
all of them,
85,000
yeah,
is like
that's the Parks Board's budget.
all of them.
But
basically.
also, to reiterate from last year's discussion, we put it as Parks projects. It's not all of Parks Board.
Right.
If there's something that Mike sees that needs
Yep.
to get done that didn't,
Right.
that is not a Parks Board project, that's where that comes out.
That's where it comes
And,
from.
and to make sure,
It's not-
Parks Board does not spend any money. They are
Right.
input to Mike and to the city about how we spend.
Exactly.
So-
And Chelsea's point that we went from 85 to 167
Yeah.
for Parks projects
Double.
is completely valid.
I think,
Okay.
so here's my request for it, is before making an approval, because I'm not necessarily opposed to giving them the money either, but before making an approval, I'd like to see a presentation.
Why we should approve a double budget.
Like, I want to know what is happening in Pride Park, I want to see the breakdown of.
And
what that
why
money
does
is.
it need to be improved?
And quite frankly, if we
Thank
put, Brewery-
you.
that's where Brewery Hill is gonna go, is underneath 390 too. So
Yep,
that number's gonna go up even further.
yep, and
So-
again, like, again, I'm not opposed to giving money for it, I just want to have the reasoning why,
Right.
so.
And I mean, how is it gonna improve it? Why does it need to be improved?
And I
that's-
think it's fair, and this kind of ties to your growth policy discussion too. In a sense, when council approves this budget, the argument can be made, you guys already approved this
In the budget.
by virtue of approving it in the
Yeah.
budget. And so we need to have that conversation about, no, pick A or B. Let's not,
Yeah.
And again, I'm okay with both a little A, a little B, but like,
Yeah.
it's just,
No, but yeah.
It's-
Okay,
again, it's a
so
lot.
I'm going to have to go. I would like to propose, if you guys would be in agreement of changing the times of the meetings by 15 minutes. So that, like, this meeting would start at 9:15, and then the next meeting would start at 10:30. So that Patty and I, so we're not rushing at the
Nope, I
end
hear
like
ya.
this, and it kind of doesn't, you know, 'cause every time, I mean, we never finish right at 9:45, or
oh, you know, they always go long.
they always go a little long. But if you bring that up at your next meeting, I would like to propose that we start this one at 9:15, and then land use and planning would then be half hour, which would be 10:30 instead of
will
10.
you bring that up tonight when we go to
Yeah.
the, below the fold?
Well, it's up to each committee to determine when they want their meetings to be as well. I
Right.
mean, so it'd be up to land use and planning to agree to meet at 10:30.
I'll bring it up
so-
at the next meeting, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you guys are okay meeting at 9:15 on the, you know, as well, you know, as long as land use and planning agree that it's okay to meet at 10:30.
Yeah.
Just to give us a little more time, so we're not
Rushing.
rushing.
And honestly, one thing with land use and planning too, is come winter or
It's
spring,
gonna
it's
change.
gonna change again, so we'll be going into evenings as well.
Okay.
Into Central.
Okay,
It's just-
so all we have, if we could get some clarification, my takeaway of this is on the Pride Park project, we'd like to see, or let council look at that project, why, you know, a presentation maybe on what the improvements are, why they need to happen, before we approve 82,000. Like with the tennis courts, we all knew that there was a big sinkhole there and it needed to be fixed.
Right,
But
and
this
again,
is different, this is a redesign, and does it need to be redesigned, what
Or
are
does
the
it have to be
improvements?
that Didn't I hear that it was the wooden containers?
Yeah, they're-
The ties are rotting and they're gonna replace them with concrete.
And
Yeah.
but do they have to do them all at once? Perhaps they should stick with their budget and do it a little bit each year, do this one this year.
do it by
Yeah.
donations, hey, you can put a table.
They have some fundraising and stuff that's like 10 or 15 that
Okay.
they're contributing.
So
Okay.
next, we're really just about done with we just have the swimming pool budget, and then, we just have the easy ones.
enterprise funds,
Yeah, the easy ones, so,
fee-based ones that are really easy.
so, we're really just about done, and we'll have our, presentations tonight, correct?
There's gonna be, we're gonna have some presentations tonight. We're still gonna have, a budget presentation that's available online for comments
Okay,
and a special meeting where we kind of go over the whole budget in a
okay.
glance thing.
It's
Yeah.
adjourned, I gotta go. Thank you, guys.
And there's only like 52 claims.